You have cancer. 3 words that change a life forever. We would like to offer another 3 words. Be an overcomer. Welcome to the 1% Podcast, where our conversations with other cancer warriors, survivors, and caregivers allows us to give you that extra boost you need to face your challenge head on, live life from a new perspective, and forge a path that keeps you moving free and clear. Now, welcome your host and cancer survivor, Truett Taylor.
Welcome to today's episode of the 1% Podcast, the show where we interview young adults who are battling or surviving an unexpected cancer diagnosis. You are not alone, and I promise, by consuming today's content, your soul will be fed with the hope, courage, and inspiration you need to keep fighting for today. I'm excited to be on your journey with you today. If you haven't done so already, be sure to head over to 1%podcast.com to sign up for our email list to see the latest news and updates for all our guests on the show. You can also check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at 1% Podcast. If you want to join in on some of our discussions, please join our Facebook group, the 1% Podcast. To contact me directly for content, questions, or booking events, you can email me at info@1%podcast.com. Welcome to episode 35 of the 1% Podcast. I've got a great and juicy topic for us to discuss before we get to the amazing Miss Laurie MacCaskil. So let's go ahead and jump right into today's 1% moment of truth. Today, this topic is going to be how to navigate dating with cancer. So I came across an article from verywellhealth.com. It was written by Lisa Fayed, where she discusses how and when to share your cancer diagnosis when you're dating. So I'm going to read a couple of lines from her article real quick to help give you guys some tips on how and when to share your cancer diagnosis when you start dating someone new. So let's face it, dating is complicated these days. It's full of unnerving decisions, from figuring out how long to wait before calling or choosing the right time to meet the parents. But when you throw a cancer diagnosis and treatment into dating dynamics, it can be even more stressful. The decision to reveal your cancer to a new love interest may not be an easy one to make. What will their reactions be? Will it scare them off? Will they think of you differently? So the first thing you need to think about is deciding who to tell is important. When you choose to tell your cancer is a personal decision. Some people are selective in who they confide in, while others are much more open with their cancer journey. It's important to know you don't have to tell everyone you date that you have cancer. Cancer might be a big part of your life, but it doesn't define who you are. With that being said, you should always tell those who are becoming serious and a possible permanent fixture in your life. So once you decide who you're going to tell, when do you tell them? So here's a few tips to help you decide when and how to tell that new person in your life about your cancer. Number 1 is listen to your intuition. You'll probably intuitively know when the time is right to tell the love interest that you have cancer. Your intuition or gut feeling will let you know exactly when the moment's right. It could be over a romantic dinner or during a long walk. It might be a spontaneous decision or could require planning. Just keep in mind, if you're nonchalant about your cancer, that does not mean your partner will have the same feeling about it. The word cancer makes people nervous. Tell them during a time that allows them to adequately process what you have brought out and into the open. Number 2, don't wait too long. If you've waited until the wedding rehearsal dinner to reveal your secret, then you've delayed it for far too long. Yes, there is a right time to share such important information, but it's not something that you should put off. If you wait too long, your partner may feel angry, hurt, or betrayed. Healthy relationships thrive on trust. And if you aren't being honest, then your partner is going to take that as a sign you may be deceitful about other things as well. Number 3, be honest and forthcoming. When you decide to talk about your diagnosis and treatment, it's important to do so with honesty. By now you've realized that your cancer has not solely affected you, but also those around you. Your partner has the right to know how serious your disease is and how it may potentially affect their life by being in a relationship with you. And finally, be prepared to answer questions. Your boyfriend or girlfriend will probably have a lot of questions about your type of cancer and how it affects you. Your partner may want to know about your prognosis, your treatment, or even if you're dying. Some questions may seem extreme, but remember, they are all valid concerns and should be addressed. And also, be prepared to continue continue answering questions as well. Keep in mind you've had this a lot longer and you've had to come to terms with your diagnosis and what that might mean. The questions might not all come at once either. So time will help them process everything. Remember, everyone reacts differently, and it's difficult to predict how one person over the other may process the information that you've just given them. All right, that's today's 1% moment of truth. If you have any questions or would you like to dig in further about this topic, please don't hesitate to send me a message on any social media site that we're part of, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or you can send me an email at info@1percentpodcast.com. All right, I am very excited to introduce our guest today, Miss Laurie MacCaskill. At the age of 55 and in perfect health, Laurie was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, which was one of the most deadly and aggressive forms of cancer. After over 3 years of chemotherapy, multiple surgeries, numerous complications, complex therapies, insurmountable side effects, and too many emergency room visits to count, she was told she only had 6 months left to live. Receiving this news didn't sit well with Laurie, and she knew that that wasn't her only option. On today's episode of the show, Laurie shares how she became part of the 9% of people who survive pancreatic cancer. Her story is so amazing, it's been featured on several news outlets such as CNN, People Magazine, and she's even been a guest on the Dr. Oz show. So why don't you guys welcome Miss Laurie MacCaskill to episode 35 of the 1% Podcast.
Hi, Laurie. Welcome to the 1% Podcast. How are you doing today?
Great, Truett. Thank you for having me.
Good. I'm excited to talk to you. I've been reviewing your story. I know you've done so many things over the past several years, and your story is amazing. Being diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, like we talked about the first time we spoke on the phone, that's not something that a lot of people come back from. And the very fact that you not only have, came back from something like that, all the things that you did while going through your treatment are truly remarkable. Just your treatment trail and all those things like that you were a part of were such a beautiful thing to go back and watch, and all the interviews you've done with CNN and Dr. Oz and different people like that. I'm just blown away by your effort to make your story known. And that's, going through cancer is not an easy thing, and it's not a fun thing to talk about. But the fact that you were so transparent with your journey, I think is amazing. I'm sure it's spoken to so many people out there. So for the people who don't really know too much about you that are listening to the show, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I was diagnosed 12 years ago. I was 55 years old. I'm an exercise enthusiast. I've always been healthy with my diet. I can't eat enough green vegetables. I'm diligent about my health checkups, and I've never smoked. So I think my diagnosis, just like any other cancer patient, I was shocked. I was in fear. I was completely surprised. I had no idea. I barely knew what the pancreas did. So I know for many, this feeling of disbelief is overwhelming. And I have always been healthy. I've never been sick. And I really didn't know what resources were available to me. And that's one of the reasons I'm reaching out now, to let people know that there are resources out there and that you can get help.
Yeah, I think that's so important. With your story being so specific, why do you think it's important for you, obviously for more resources for people, but deep down inside, why do you think it's important for you to share your story?
As you know, Truett, pancreatic cancer is the deadliest cancer, and it is now the third deadliest cancer, soon to be the second in a couple of years. And unfortunately, the symptoms are so similar to other diseases that it's very difficult to diagnose, and there are no early detection markers. By the time the symptoms appear, the disease is usually advanced, and there are few curative methods. The 5-year survival rate right now is only 9%, and around 91, 92% of the patients do not survive 12 months. So it is a terrifying disease, and there need to be more resources, more heightened awareness about what's available. And I want people to know that you can live with cancer and you can overcome diseases. I was given 3 to 6 months to live, and that was, I was diagnosed 12 years ago, and then I was on almost 4 years of treatment, and at that time I was given 3 months to live. So I think it's important to know in my journey, there are so many aspects which we can cover, but it really was the mindset. And I believe that that positive attitude, which sounds at times impossible when you're going through a death sentence and you're at your lowest, but there are many aspects of the positive mind and using that to create a healing environment that can help you survive.
Yeah, your attitude is one of the choices you get to make. And I love that you, by the way you put that, as far as you're making that choice to create a positive, a healing environment for yourself, because the negativity of, all the things you can possibly think of, when you think I have a 9% chance to live, that's not a lot. And the fact that you made it past that, and, now that it's been 12 years, it's almost like you have a duty to share your story because you're one of the few that survived, and you're speaking to all the other people that get diagnosed. And I think it's just such a beautiful thing, what you've done so far. And I'm really excited for the people to hear your story today. Let's talk a little bit about your life prior to your diagnosis. I know I saw a bunch of videos. You were super fit, and
I love nature. I love outdoors. And I have sort of a risk factor in there that I think that I can do things and I can't necessarily. I used to swim in the bay in San Francisco without a wetsuit, and it's cold. It's very cold in the 50s. And I've done a 100-mile bike ride in Aspen and with all the altitude in the mountains, and it took me a long time, but I completed it. And I love being in nature, and I love the community and the camaraderie of doing that with friends. And that really makes a difference. I'm passionate about food and wine. I love to cook. I love to eat. I love to travel. And I think spending times with family and friends is just the nicest gift available. Yeah. So I've always been incredibly active, Energizer bunny, curious, wanting to do and go and never stopping. And that was one of the key factors in my journey. As low as I got and as difficult as it was physically as well as mentally, I tried to live my life as normally as possible. And when you talk about attitude, I believe my life is 10% of what happens to me and 90% of what I do with it. Mm-hmm. We all have a choice to make every single day of the attitude that we're going to embrace. Bad things happen to all of us. None of us escape. And we really get to decide how we manage that situation, that challenge, and really hopefully learn and benefit from those struggles.
Prior to your diagnosis, what kind of goals did you have set up for yourself that you wanted to accomplish that all of a sudden pancreatic cancer greatly altered for you?
I've been in a different variety of businesses throughout my life, and I've been married, and I have a couple of stepchildren. And I've lived in different states across the country. So I've had a variety of different interests and careers, and certainly extraordinary challenges. I believe for me, and not everybody gets to this point, but I hope they do, that my disease has really been a gift. And there is no way 10 years ago or 20 years ago I would have said to you, oh, well, I've turned my life around and now I'm working as a personal patient advocate and as a volunteer on behalf of pancreatic cancer. And it's such a gift to know that a lot of my strengths and skills, I was in communications consultant. So now giving speeches and as a keynote speaker in a variety of different situations, whether it be business or to medical institutions, it has really helped me to be able to convey a message that is inspiring and hopeful and authentic, just to talk about my journey. I'm not alone. Many, many people experience this, but just the ways that I was able to overcome it. Mm-hmm. So in looking back, I'm grateful for sort of the foundation that I had and what I did that's allowing me to propel this new life and this new advocacy.
It sounds like you had a strong foundation. Then all of a sudden, at 55, this purpose comes in your life from surviving the cancer, and you were almost being prepared all of those years for such a hard fight, it sounds like to me. And
well, I also, Truett, I have to say, pardon me for interrupting, but I also have when I was very young, a really a childhood environment that went from calm to extremely turbulent. And there was so much, I really felt like I was swimming in darkness. There was abandonment, there was physical and verbal abuse. There was, even though I lived in an environment that was somewhat privileged, there was no nurturing, there was no encouragement, there was abandonment, there was no support. And I felt like I was swimming in darkness, and I didn't know what step to take. But what I realize now is 46 years later, I felt once again when I received this diagnosis that I'm swimming in darkness again. But I really believe those struggles as a child gave me that foundation that you mentioned for resilience, for grit. You don't know it at the time, and you don't wish it on anybody. But that gave me really a strength, because throughout this journey, I see where I don't take no for an answer. When I was first diagnosed, I was dismissed. If I had listened to them, I wouldn't be here today. Mm-hmm. And using my voice and believing in myself, that's the message I want to convey, because it's so important, as you know, in any kind of crisis or situation we're in. It's really important to have that. So from childhood throughout the few struggles, many struggles, and now this, it's really given me a base and a foundation to take the next step forward.
I love that. Can you take us back to the day when you were first diagnosed? You said what actually led you to the doctor to begin with? Were you having any kind of symptoms, or what took you to the doctor at that moment?
I was in New York getting dressed for a party, and as I was leaning over, I felt as if, well, I've never been electrocuted, but that's what I felt like. This pain starting at the top of my head, going through my entire body. And it was sharp, it was intense, it took my breath away, and I almost passed out. But it only lasted 5 or 7 seconds. And then I went to the party, and the next day I was race walking with girlfriends in Central Park, and we go very fast. And I said, I can't go very fast. I have this backache. And they said, oh, it was probably the heels you wore at the party last night. And I thought, yes. But the pain was only on one side of my back, Truett, and it was about the size of an orange, lower back. And it was often debilitating, where I could hardly get out of bed. It was so strange. I've never had anything like that before. But mostly it was annoying. 4 days later, I returned to my home in Los Angeles, and I went to a sports doctor, and he said, well, you have gas, take an enema. I knew I didn't have gas, but I did what he instructed. And the pain just never, ever left. And I went to my internist, and I never once thought, for over the few months that I kept going back to the doctor and asking for tests, I never once thought I had cancer. I thought I had an infection. I kept saying, do a test, give me an antibiotic, let's clear this up, because I never felt better. I had lost my appetite, which is really unusual. I traveled, but the pain never left. So I finally, after being dismissed, they told me it was my imagination. You pulled a muscle exercising, which none of that I knew was true. I asked for a scan. I've never had a scan, so I didn't know what I was asking for, an MRI or a PET scan. And that's when they discovered it. They did an endoscopy. And when the doctor told me, I said, I don't have pancreatic cancer. That's a death sentence. You have the wrong file. Get the right file.
Right.
So I was really in disbelief.
I mean, I can only imagine when you take care of yourself so well, you assume that your body is going to respond to that, and you're going to outlive everybody. You're going to have a healthier lifestyle, but that's just not the way cancer works sometimes. I was in a similar situation, an athlete who had perfect health, don't drink, don't smoke. My mom always said I was her healthiest child, and I'm the one that ended up with cancer. And it's crazy how things like that work out for us, unfortunately. Whenever you were getting that diagnosis and you got through maybe the denial stage and you start working your way through the grief cycle, when you started receiving treatment, I know that the treatment is pretty rough for pancreatic cancer. What kind of side effects and what kind of limitations did you have from the treatment you started receiving?
I was very fortunate in that the doctor I selected quickly, which I think is important with patients, is to get a plan, get a doctor quickly. Know that the decisions you're making early on, believe in yourself, they're the right ones, but also believe and know that this is fluid. Things can change. It doesn't have to be set in stone. But usually time is of essence, and certainly with pancreatic cancer, there is an urgency. I felt very comfortable and confident with this doctor. Again, he was an expert in the field, and that is critical. I knew nothing about this disease, and I didn't know what steps were ahead of me. I started on a pill form of chemotherapy, which was thwarted because of some complications. I was rushed to the hospital. Surgery was performed. The doctor in recovery said they were not successful. They would leave me there for a few hours and then repeat the procedure. This time in surgery, I woke up freezing cold in unbearable pain. And I managed to talk, and I asked the doctor, what are you doing? It really hurts and I'm cold. This time it was a female doctor, and she said, well, I'm taking a needle in a tube and I'm pulling it through your liver, and I can't give you any more anesthesia. Well, that was more information than I wanted. I started on chemotherapy, a very toxic protocol. And at the time, there were only 2 or 3 drugs approved for the pancreas. And my doctor was a real maverick. He would create different protocols using many drugs that were not approved for the pancreas. I never questioned this. I believed in him. Mm-hmm. Whatever he said, I did. And I believe that's one of the reasons of my success today. Again, it was not, for me, standard of care. And it was really these other drugs that contributed to successfully curing me. So I was on chemo for, about 3.5 years. I wanted to be the first appointment, so I was always in the office at 7 or 7:30. I'd bring a huge bag of that. We didn't have iPads at the time, and sometimes I brought my computer, but I'd have newspapers and pads and my to-do list, and sometimes I would just nap and sleep and think and meditate and pray. But mostly I would always occupy my mind with something. Right. And I knew that right after I would feel fine, I would always, if I was traveling, go right from the office, from the treatment to the airport, travel, knowing a few days later the side effects would kick in. And just like everybody, they range from the nausea, incredible fatigue, unlike I've ever experienced, eye infections. The inside of my mouth was raw. I felt as if a blowtorch had been taken to it. And I could barely swallow or brush my teeth. Something we take for granted, breathing, became really difficult at times because of so many lung infections. Any kind of movement was monumental. And of course, the neuropathy. I lost my hair and my eyebrows and my eyelashes twice, which is pretty devastating for a woman. One time in the ambulance, I was getting treatment and I passed it. My heart stopped. And I was rushed to the hospital, and I'm in the ambulance, and I'm half awake, half asleep at this point. They have all the drugs. I mean, they've done the paddles to my heart. I hear the one paramedic say, female, 57 years old, pancreatic cancer, 120 pounds. Oh my God, my eyes flew open. I said, I'm not 120 pounds. I never have been. I never will be. And I swear that ambulance shook. Those 6 paramedics started laughing and howling with laughter. And they said, she's going to be just fine. So I had complications like everybody, but I believe one of the most important factors is trying to live your life as normally as possible. Mm-hmm. And that's what I really tried to do and did. So I exercise every day, and I certainly couldn't do what I used to do. But if it was just walking around the block, and maybe it would take me an hour, where normally it's 6 minutes, mm-hmm. That's what I adjusted to, that new normal. And if it was accepting an invitation and maybe having to leave your house, your dinner party, that's what I would do. I really tried to manage my life and the pain and the side effects, but also keeping into play that I just don't want to be sick. I want to have a normal life.
Right. Throughout all the physical struggles you mentioned, You mentioned losing your hair, your eyebrows, your eyelashes, everything, and then the ambulance rides, all those things. When you look back on it, what was your lowest moment emotionally? Because as you know, I know as a female, your identity is something that's really obviously important. When you start losing your hair, you start seeing a different person in the mirror. So it kind of play tricks on your mind a little bit. And then you feel bad and all the things that kind of go with that. What would you say your lowest point, maybe mentally or emotionally or spiritually, was? Because I think mental health is something that's often overlooked whenever you're going through cancer treatment. So if there's someone listening right now and that's maybe having a low moment, and I'd love to hear what your lowest moment was and share with us what you did to overcome that.
Pain doesn't, as we know, always go away, and it can manifest itself. So it's so overwhelming that it becomes really weaves a fabric in our being and in our soul. And we can sometimes question, why am I doing this? Or what's the purpose? And I feel so low, and I'm discouraged, and I'm depressed. I believe it's really important to celebrate our small accomplishments, maybe just getting through the day, and be gentle and patient with ourselves to recognize these small accomplishments. There were many times that I was in that deep, dark hole, and that overwhelming emphasis on not being able to control anything, that was devastating, because that wasn't a normal life. Things that I used to do with energy and ease and not even think about it were now overwhelming and mostly impossible. And I just didn't know, there was no instruction book or nobody that I talked to that would say, well, this is what I did and it helped me, or you might try this. And I really thought, I just have to get through the day. I would think about tomorrow is another day. If I could just take a nap that's uninterrupted, or if I can just go through the day without being nauseous. I'll tell you one of the things that really helped me. I'm not a writer, and I had read certainly a lot about gratitude journals. And I started to keep a gratitude journal. But for me, Truett, it was the simplest exercise. This wasn't an overwhelming project where I wrote an essay or these beautifully crafted paragraphs. Nobody was going to see this or edit or critique me. And I would jot 3 things down a day, as simple as that. I love the view from my window. I really enjoyed my phone call from Susan. I was able to take a nap for 2 hours. And then I would look at them at the end of the week. And honestly, there would be tears of joy and laughter, and I would revisit moments that probably in my normal life seemed not as consequential, that we, again, take for granted. That view, I see it all the time. It's really pretty, but I'm on to something else. Now I'm really present. I take note of it, and I appreciate, and it's either with a prayer, it's with a gratitude, something that really makes me present and feel the moment. And I know that was responsible in changing my mindset. And if we change how we think, that can change how we feel. So it was really these small little steps that I took in believing in myself. And it wasn't that I wasn't discouraged. I was depressed. There were the dark moments. But I just thought, if I could just take this next step. And again, for me, I didn't have expectations. I never asked my doctor, how long am I going to be on this drug? What's my prognosis? What do you think? Because I didn't want to be disappointed. And I think that is really key. Again, for my personality, that worked so well, because I didn't really have that much to look forward to that I could be disappointed or celebrate, but there were lots of things to celebrate. So it was unexpected. And that really boosted my mind, and I think helped create a healing environment.
Yeah. Was there one moment that you can think of that was the lowest that you had?
Oh, yeah. I remember late in the night in my room, dark, just thinking, am I going to go through another day like this? It just can't. And I took some medication, and I was able to fitfully sleep. I mean, I would wake up constantly every few hours in pain writhing out, screaming, lying in a pool of water. And that was most nights. And I would wake up in the morning and just think, I have nothing to look forward to. And every part of my body aches. And I just don't want to go through every day like this. But either I would meditate, I would watch a movie, maybe not the whole thing. And normally, okay, that's another thing. We'll watch a film and you think I'm going to watch the entire hour and a half or 2 hours. Even if it was 10 minutes, again, I didn't give myself, okay, I'm going to read this next chapter in a book, or I'm going to watch this film, or my friend's going to come over and we're going to visit for a couple of hours. No, it might be only 5 minutes. It might be only 20 minutes. But it was that commitment, I'm going to try. And I think that helped me get out of that dark place. And again, not having the expectation. So if I feel better on Thursday, Friday's going to be even better. No, I just allowed myself compassion. And sometimes I would think, Laurie, if you were helping a friend, what would you say to them? Say that to yourself, because I think we're all hard on ourselves. I know I am. And so I had to really have that conversation with myself.
So let's fast forward a little bit to, you start your treatment schedule, you're on the regimen. When did you start the treatment on the trail thing? Like that was something I was reading about for you, in your blog, on your website. When did you start all of that? And when did you start noticing that it was important for you to be an advocate and really get your story out there to people while you were going through treatment?
My first year of this journey, so in 12 years ago, probably 11 years ago, I was attending a meeting for the Pancreatic Cancer Institute, and that's a national advocacy organization. I'm not a group type person. I didn't think this would be of interest. I didn't know anyone there. I sat in the last row of the conference, the chair, I had my escape route. And I found that the doctors were so engaging. The information conveyed was easy to understand. It wasn't threatening. The group was not depressing. Not everybody was dying. It was completely opposite of what I expected. It was a community. It was a family. And I was a donor, volunteer, and became a director on their board of directors, a chair of the board for several years. I learned so much for them, and reaching out and helping others, it gave so much meaning and purpose to this disease, but also to me. It really saved my soul in so many ways. And after a little over 3 years of a very toxic protocol, many doctors said, you're not going to die from the cancer, Laurie. You're going to die from the treatments. And I was given 3 to 6 months to live and get your affairs in order. And I tried another doctor. And very quickly, I want to say the critical importance of managing your records. And this was, again, before digital. I had never been sick before, so I didn't know how important the first Excel sheet that I made with the doctor I saw, the facility, the nurse, every piece of information. I got a copy of every blood test, every scan, everything pertinent to my disease. And I kept it in binders. And as the years progressed, I had no idea how helpful this would be. So this new doctor I called out of state was not taking new patients, even though I had a very good recommendation. And I kept stalking the patient, the personal patient advocate, and I'd call her about 4 times a day. And finally, on the 5th day, she said, well, Laurie, send me your records. If he is taking new patients, it'll be in 6 months. Well, I knew I would be dead in 6 months. So I sent my binder, edited. And the next morning she called me and said, the doctor is so impressed. He's never seen anything like this. He wants to know if you'd come here and teach a patient advocacy program, a record-keeping program. And in seeing this doctor, he had a different opinion of my diagnosis, recommended that I have an IV twice a day for the next 30 days, and that would be administered in the hospital. So I asked if I could learn how to administer that myself and travel.
Right.
And he said, well, nobody's ever asked me that before. But that, again, is a statement of saying, I want to live my life. If I have 3 months to live, I'm not going to be in a hospital dying. I'll go as far as I can. So that was what you saw, the video. We didn't have videos on our phones at the time. And my husband at the time, we were riding our bikes up the mountain. And I mentioned that I wanted to go early in the morning. And he said, well, you've started your IV. Let's do it later. Nope, I'm going to go right now. So I packed it in a fanny pack with me with all the accoutrements that go along with it. And we rode our bike up an altitude, a mountain in Colorado, and I pulled over and found this bear-proof trash container and pulled out my little towel and all my syringes and completed the treatment, and we continued on. Now, did I have tons of energy and lots of strength? Absolutely not. But to me, I was doing what I loved most. I was outdoors, I was in nature, I was exercising, I was with my husband. It was really, to me, a perfect way to spend a morning. And I was able to overcome the treatment, the disease, and I have been cancer-free since.
That's a huge blessing. Yeah, I watched that video of you going through that. And I was just amazed at the autonomy you want to take by giving yourself your own treatments. I think that's a way of you not letting the disease control you, but you control what you can regarding the disease and being able to administer the medication. When you were serving on the board, it's PanCan is the name of the group. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
When you were serving on the board, you had a chance to start seeing so many other people. You said something earlier about not being a support group type person. I'm the same way. I didn't want to go and feel worse about myself when I left. And but you being a part of such a large and great organization, how did that change your perspective on the whole organized method of having these groups out here and advocacy groups for people?
I was completely overwhelmed by their focus, their organization, their commitment, their dedication to this disease, and the strides that need to be made. We're the least funded by the NIH. We're the world's deadliest cancer, and the commitment they made to heighten the awareness of the disease, to strengthen and increase research and funding for early detection markers so that people can survive, for better curative methods. It was so impressive. And in every state across the country and all these community settings and important medical institutions as well as small clinics, this has been such a devotion of theirs. And I learned how important it was. I don't like to talk about myself, and I don't want to be the center of attention, but I learned the importance of sharing my story. They helped me. They really gave me the tools and the skills to be able to use my voice and to share with others, this is what I've gone through. It might be different for you, but you can overcome that. Ask for help. Come to us. They have an incredible service called Patient Services where you can call in, you can get help, advice, all free of charge. They'll help you with clinical trials, everything really centered around you and your molecular profile for your tumor. So this was a complete education for me, and I learned so much about myself, but to see people that were struggling, unfortunately some did not survive, but the gifts that they gave to all of us and the people that do overcome this and the caregivers and the all the medical institution, it's been a joyful experience. And I've funded 2 researchers for grants, and to see that how important the donations are and the funding and advancing science and research for this disease. It's really been a gift.
Yeah, everything I've read about the organization. I have a close friend who, has a similar situation as you, and she survived. She was given a very short amount of time to live, and she survived. And she cannot say enough great things about PanCan and what all they've done for so many people. It's got, with pancreatic cancer being one of the deadliest cancers or the deadliest cancer, it's got to be a tough environment to be in sometimes when you're around that much death, I would say, or the possibility of that much death. So it's almost like being a hospice nurse in a way when I think of it, where the potentials of someone making it aren't as great as they would be for something else. So it takes an even more special person, in my opinion, to deal with that, that end of life circumstance and stuff like that. So I applaud you for all that you've done with that. Just looking back through some of the things that I read about you, it was amazing. So we have a lot of listeners for the show, and everyone's at a different spot in their cancer life cycle or their cancer journey. Some may be in a healing spot, whether they're surviving and are, several years past being diagnosed. Some may be newly diagnosed and scared and worried, and all the same emotions that both you and I felt from the very beginning. If you could give one or two things, like specific advice to someone listening right now that's maybe unique to your story, what would that be to help them keep fighting and look for the good things and push forward through their journey?
One of the best gifts I received from this disease was learning about vulnerability. I'm pretty independent. I don't like to ask for help. I don't want to burden anybody. And I realized that what can I do for you, Laurie? We all get this. People want to help. And I would say, oh, nothing, I'm fine. And finally, opening up and saying, well, you know what? This or that. I learned what a gift it was for the donor as well as for me, the receiver. And it could be a small material object. It could be an experience. It could be whatever it is, large or small. There were so many benefits and gifts that really made a difference for both of us. And that helped a lot in the healing. I learned so much about myself. And so I would say to those, ask for help. Don't be afraid to show your emotions, to really be you. Set boundaries. Let people know what you want, but what you don't want. That's really important. And be clear on that. Use your voice and believe in yourself. The decisions that you make, and know that they're going to change. It doesn't have to set in stone. This is not like a business plan when we're organizing something in our business or a personal life. This is unlike a journey that most of us have never encountered before. Right. So we really need to be open and understand that. And I believe that, again, having a plan, believing in yourself, setting boundaries, that positive attitude, that mindset that I'm going to get through this. Tomorrow is another day. This is a chapter in our lives, not our whole story. And celebrate those small achievements, as small as they are. That is really something to recognize and helps create that mindset for healing. And I think about sometimes the quote of Louisa May Alcott, where she said, "I'm not afraid of storms, for I'm learning how to sail my ship." And that's how I feel in this journey. I knew nothing about it. PanCan and all the other incredible scientists, physicians, survivors, caregivers had given me so many tools for success. Of course, my doctor and my team and my family and friends. And it's important to recognize that and be present and to know that, look at who you are as a person and learn and be open to that. And you never know how strong you are until strong is the only choice you have.
I love that. I love that so much. For us, and I'll include myself as I have a lot of similarities to you. For us, I would say, air quotes, tough people, we think we can get through anything, but there comes a time where, when we break down, I think a lot of people around us know, maybe how tough we are. And they're like, wow, if Laurie breaks down, or if Truett breaks down, it must really be pretty bad. But I think we can maybe catch that a little sooner. And I'm speaking to all the tough people out there that think they can get through stuff, because cancer has a way of greatly humbling you to a point where you've never experienced before. And no matter what you've been through before, this is completely different. And the treatment will sneak up on you really quick and get you. And I love what you said about being vulnerable. Being vulnerable with your emotions is a tough thing. And especially if you've built up that self-defense inside of your mind or in your heart from past experiences where you've had to be tough, being vulnerable about how you feel about this disease is something that's really hard for a lot of people. And again, asking for help, that's the hardest thing to do sometimes, but it's one sentence that really gets us to what we need. And so I just want to reiterate those two things that you had mentioned. and then the positive mindset as well too. I think you create that environment. You're vulnerable, you're asking for help. That really helped. That's really a recipe for a lot of success. You're giving yourself the best possible options and the best possible chance to make it through this disease. And so I love everything you say with that. What would you say would be the best way for people to, hear about you and read your story and connect with you?
Well, thank you for asking. I have a website, which is my name, LaurieMacCaskilll.com. And I'm on some social media, Twitter or Instagram at LaurieMac, LaurieMacc.com, or Facebook at LaurieMacCaskilll.com. And I also reach out to different organizations, whether it's business organizations, YPO, women's groups, medical institutions. I'm a keynote speaker on a variety of different topics. And I also do patient advocacy. I coach patients and caregivers on, again, how to manage a challenging journey. Mm-hmm. And I know we hear people say, I went up, I remember before I was diagnosed, and I saw a gentleman in a wheelchair that had lost his legs. And I was talking to him for a minute, and he said, this has been such a gift. I am so blessed. And I thought, how could he say this? And I realize now through our challenges, what we learn, and if we choose to accept and believe in ourselves, there really are, you see the light at the end of the tunnel, and you do accept the gifts, and you see, I don't want anyone to have a minute of my journey, but I wouldn't trade places with anyone. And so I hope people can really be open, be present, listen to understand, forgive, be gentle and patient with yourself, and just take it a day at a time, and know that just accept it as long as it takes, and ask for help, and know that there is help out there. And with it, research, go on the internet. Today, we're so lucky. I didn't have that 12 years ago, but with groups like PanCan for pancreatic cancer, they're the best. There's also a site, Cancer Connect, which I'm the pancreatic cancer moderator for all different cancers. It's extraordinary. Go online. You're in a private community. You don't have to identify yourself. You can ask questions. You can get advice, learn about different side effects or clinical trials that are available, medical institutions. So inform yourself, ask for help, do your research. But also, I think it's important to do, when you're first diagnosed, do only so much research. Have
Right.
that protective layer, and let others help you in doing that for you.
It's amazing. This whole time, I guess it's just being from the South. It's so hard for me to call you Laurie. I want to call you Miss MacCaskilll. It's just how I was raised. But
that makes me feel really old.
No, it's just being in the South. That's what we do, I guess. Cute. First of all, not everybody will be able to see, I guess, what you look like. But you look amazing, by the way. Your hair looks great. Like, everything looks wonderful. You look amazing, and to have gone through so much in your journey and everything else, you couldn't tell. And I think that's always a good sign of someone. We shouldn't wait. Cancer is a part of our story. It's not our entire story. And I think those of us can get past it and can look like a normal human being, I would say, afterwards, and not carry that with us the entire time in a negative way. We tend to, I say, don't look like we've ever been sick. I get that a lot. Like, oh, you look completely opposite from all the stuff that's ever happened to you. And I think you really wear that well, and the passion and the desire that you have. We tend to stand in the gap for people who don't have that strength at that moment. Over the past 12 years, like, I've seen, I'm sure you've seen that your stories just really met people where they were, and I think that's why doing like podcasts or some sort of community engagement is so important, because I didn't realize how important a community was. Again, that goes back to, I guess, the ego, the stubborn, the being the tough guy and all those things. But the community helps heal you, and it really gives you all the things that you don't know that you need. So, I'm sure you've heard us a bunch, but, on behalf of everybody that you've ever spoken in front of and everything else, I want to personally thank you for everything that you've done in your life in the past 12 years, everything that's led up to where you're at now, because I feel like that's part of your legacy. You will go down as, somebody who's accomplished so much and who's overcame so much, and you'll be an inspiration for so many people out there. So that's why for me, it was really important to have you on the show here, because you're a wonderful work of art, and, you're not anywhere near done. You've got so much more to give to people and to speak to people. So I'm not writing you off or anything like that, but, I'm just excited for you. I tell everybody I'm excited for your life, and I'm grateful for your life and all that you've done. So thank you for being a part of the show. Again, it's an honor for me to be able to speak to you and be able to share all of your information out there. So if you want to get in touch with Laurie, and I'll definitely post all of her social media, and I'll tag you and drop all your links in the show notes so people can find your website and all the things that you've done. And if they have any additional questions, they can reach out to you or reach out to me, and I'll connect them up with you, and we'll get everything taken care of. But thank you again for being a part of the show. And we'll stay in touch with you and see all the great things that you have, lined up in the future. And we'll be able to share those with everybody as well too.
I want to say I am grateful for you and for this opportunity to have this conversation with you and to reach out and help others and spread the message. I am very grateful and impressed with your devotion and commitment to helping patients, survivors, a community at large, and making a difference, sharing your story. It's brave, it's courageous, it's honest, it's authentic. And that makes all the difference in the world. And some people may not recognize that right now and only know it later when they're going through something. But I hope they have that opportunity to always know that you are there. I'm here. All of us are out there in a community wanting to help, wanting to share. So thank you for this incredible opportunity to meet you and interact with your audience.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
We appreciate you spending time with us on today's episode and encourage you to continue the conversation to help you keep pushing forward. For more resources based on today's episode, as well as ways to recommend a guest and connect to Truett personally, head over to 1%podcast.com. Be sure to join us next time for more stories of inspiration right here with Truett Taylor on the 1% Podcast.